I try to give myself grace. Everyone tells me to do that. It's hard. At the end of the day, I feel like it's on me, and I let everybody down. That kind of raw honesty is rare in professional sports, and it set the tone for a night that felt bigger than a box score. On one side, a veteran star processing the weight of an elimination. On the other, a young core in Indiana that refused to fold, surging into the WNBA semifinals for the first time since 2015. If you're just catching up, yes, the Indiana Fever are moving on. And they did it with 6 players out, in a hostile building, without the rookie sharpshooter whose gravity has defined much of their season. The headline isn't simply that they advanced. It's how they did it. Toughness, composure, and a center in Aliyah Boston who controlled the paint with poise beyond her years. No one had the Fever circled for a deep run a few weeks ago. Not with the injuries piling up, not with so much of the rotation in street clothes, and certainly not with their franchise guard unavailable. Analysts were blunt. Without those pieces, Indiana's margin for error was too slim. And yet the group coached by Stephanie White, who knows a thing or two about pushing the right buttons in May and June, locked in, re-centered, and fought through a 3-game grind against Atlanta. It wasn't pretty at times. It wasn't easy at any point. But the way it ended, on a late go-ahead bucket and a final defensive stand, felt like the arrival of a team that now understands exactly what it takes to survive in the WNBA playoffs. White hinted at that urgency on the morning of Game 3. She talked about desperation, about valuing every single possession, about playing with hunger in a win-or-go-home scenario. Those aren't empty cliches when half your rotation is out and you're playing on the road. They're marching orders. And from the opening tip in Atlanta's Gateway Center Arena, you could feel it. The Fever weren't there to hold on. They were there to take the game. The last time Indiana won a playoff series, Tamika Catchings still anchored the franchise. Stephanie White was guiding them to the WNBA Finals back then, while a young big by the name of Natasha Howard was just cutting her teeth in the league. Nearly a decade later, the fanbase has endured rebuilds, retools, and maybe next year conversations. On Friday night, the narrative finally snapped. Instead of talking about what Indiana didn't have, everyone was talking about what they did. The ability to keep coming, to make the next play, to lift each other, and to execute with clarity in the last 2 minutes. The atmosphere in Atlanta barely felt like a road game by the second half. Fever fans traveled, and a big chunk of the building found its voice when the margin tightened. It matters more than casual viewers realize. You saw it in the energy Indiana brought on every loose ball and every defensive rotation. You heard it when they made a run and didn't let it slip. And you saw it again when their injured players, still very much present in huddles, amplified the focus instead of fading into the background. Caitlin Clark spent the night engaged, reading the game from the bench, talking through actions with teammates. Sophie Cunningham practically worked as an extra assistant, pulling players aside with observations. Others kept the energy up non-stop. They were down bodies, but they weren't short on voice. If ever there was a sixth woman effect without anyone stepping on the court, this was it. There's validation in what this meant for the on-floor core as well. Friday brought the first playoff series win for Aliyah Boston. It did the same for Kelsey Mitchell, who has waited years for a postseason platform that matched her talent. It did it for Lexi Hull, whose role has grown through sheer persistence and consistent defense. Every player who saw the floor did something that mattered, from the starters to the last spot. And the officiating noise that hovered over the first 2 games, missed calls, late whistles, the kind of controversy that can swallow a series, didn't derail them. They said what needed to be said behind closed doors, then let their game speak when it counted. Let's talk about Boston, because she's the thread that ties this entire night together. She finished with 14 points, 12 rebounds, and 6 assists, but the numbers only tell you the outline. The real story is how she made her minutes matter. She made the go-ahead layup with 7.4 seconds left when Indiana chose not to call a timeout, sealing a comeback with the kind of calm, fundamental footwork that turns chaos into clarity. She didn't chase blocks. She didn't take the bait on pump fakes. She bodied without fouling. She steered her matchup away from sweet spots, then contested late with high hands or slid into position to cut off an angle. It was classic playoff basketball, the kind that frustrates a scorer and steadies a defense. The other side of that matchup told its own story. A veteran center who, for years, defined postseason dominance inside was not on the floor for the deciding stretch. That image, of an all-time talent watching from the bench during an elimination game, ran through social media before the buzzer even sounded. It was jarring because we're used to seeing that player change games in exactly those moments. It was sobering because the playoffs have a way of speeding up the timeline on uncomfortable questions. Is this merely a slump under the wrong matchups? Is it a sign of wear and tear? Is it the moment when the league's center hierarchy officially turns over? You can feel the sport wrestling with those questions without jumping to an answer after one series. Elite players don't forget how to be elite. The legs aren't as fresh as they used to be, the rotations don't come as easily, and the second jump doesn't snap like it did 5 years ago, but the know-how remains. And yet, watching Boston take control of the paint while a decorated veteran sat, you couldn't ignore the symbolism. For a decade, that veteran center's name was synonymous with scary in May. Now, the player who makes opposing coaches lose sleep might be wearing a Fever jersey. Even if you highlight Boston before anyone else, this was not a one-person win. Kelsey Mitchell stamped the first half with the kind of shot-making that swings tournaments. She scored 24, including 19 before the break, repeatedly punishing gaps and split-second lapses. Atlanta's game plan was clear: crowd the lane, throw bodies into her driving lines, live with 2s over 3s. She responded by slipping through tight windows, feeding hot hands, and finding enough space at the elbows to keep Indiana within touching distance when the game could have gotten away. It was fearless and necessary. Everything a postseason scorer needs to be against a team that wants to turn you into a jump shooter. Odyssey Sims added exactly what you hope from a veteran guard who has seen every coverage the league can throw at you. Her 16 points and 8 assists won't surprise anyone who has followed her career, but what defined her night was timing. Sims delivered the pass that sprung the winning basket, an in-rhythm feed to Boston when the Fever waved off a timeout and trusted their reads. That's a seasoned point guard trusting her eyes. She kept the ball hopping, broke down the defense with sharp changes of pace, and created second-side actions when Atlanta loaded up on Mitchell. If you're looking for the possession that proves composure traveled to Atlanta with Indiana, it's that late two-person action between Sims and Boston that carved the decisive lane. Lexi Hull authored the defensive play of the series, reading the final inbound with 7.4 to go and jumping the pass cleanly to shut the door. Those are seconds that consume you if your hands aren't quiet and your feet aren't set. She had both. It wasn't just that single moment either. Hull threw her body into screens. She slid with drivers and recovered smartly when she got rubbed off a pick. She tracked shooters in the corners and battled from behind on the glass. Teams win game 3s in the margins, and Hull owned the margins. Indiana also got what every road team needs to win an elimination game: real minutes from role players who stay ready. A reserve forward fought her way to 5 rebounds in barely 4 minutes on the floor. Another knocked down a momentum-swerving 3 in the fourth quarter, the kind of shot that flips "we might have a chance" into "we're taking this." Those are the sequences you remember afterward for their impact, if not for their highlight value. You could sense the bench's mental preparation bleeding into every rotation and every late contest. You saw it in the way the Fever managed end-of-quarter moments, limiting the Dream's cheap points and making them work for everything in the paint. By the time the final horn sounded, resilience had beaten depth, cohesion had beaten comfort, and the Fever had beaten the odds. They closed the Game 3 that many thought would belong to Atlanta because Atlanta had more bodies, more rest, more size on the wing. They did it because they trusted each other and because Boston, Mitchell, Sims, Hull, and the rest were better together than the numbers on the injury report might have suggested. That victory sets up a mouth-watering WNBA semifinal. Indiana Fever versus Las Vegas Aces. No more upstart versus young core narratives here. The two-time defending champions stand next, with Aya Wilson performing like the best player in the world, Jackie Young showing why she's one of the most versatile two-way guards alive, Kelsey Plum stretching defenses to the parking lot, and Chelsea Gray orchestrating when healthy with a vision that cracks open even the most disciplined shell. This is what happens when you punch above your weight. Your reward is the heavyweight with the belts. Becky Hammon summed it up with a line that landed as both a reminder and a warning. They haven't seen the real aces yet. That's not posturing. That's a coach telling the league that Las Vegas has gears it can still hit, defensively with early help and stunts, offensively with layered actions that turn switches into target practice. The Aces survived a loud test against Seattle because Wilson went nuclear and Young took and made the biggest shot. That's who they are. They live in the moments that require you to be your calmest self. What does that mean for the Fever? It means every live ball turnover becomes a problem, because the aces are lethal in transition. It means every weak pass on the perimeter invites a run out the other way. It means the pace of your mind has to be a beat quicker than it was against Atlanta, because Vegas closes space faster and recovers smarter. Kelsey Mitchell's shot selection becomes even more critical. She has to strike the balance she found in Game 3, aggressive without forcing it, ruthless in the mid-range when it's there, decisive recognizing when the short roll or the early post catch for Boston is the right read. Odyssey Sims must continue to flatten out traps with her handle and spend possessions hunting the weak side when the aces load up. Indiana's wings have to hit catch-and-shoot threes to punish help and make Vegas pay for over-rotating. Everything tightens in a series like this. Boston's matchup with Wilson is the obvious headline, but it's the subtleties that often swing it. Who wins early seals? Who draws the second foul first? Who keeps the other off the offensive glass? Wilson will defend multiple positions. She will beat you down the floor. She will make you pick your poison on dribble handoffs. Boston has the discipline to stand her ground, but the Fever will also need timely digs to help their center without surrendering back cuts. Their low-man rotations must be automatic. The radio calls are right. The paint is not just about points. It's about control. Whichever team imposes its terms there, on both ends, is halfway home in any given game. Indiana can lean on something they just proved beyond doubt. Their togetherness does not wobble when the odds stack up. They didn't fold after the calls and non-calls in Games 1 and 2 against Atlanta. They didn't lose their head when the Dream made their run in the third quarter of Game 3. They didn't let the road crowd shake them during free throws with under a minute remaining. That identity travels, and it's the kind you need against a champion that punishes your every lapse. It also doesn't hurt that this locker room seems to draw strength from embracing its reality, not pretending it away. They know they're short-handed. They know there's no cavalry coming. And yet, throughout Friday night, you saw injured teammates contributing without touching the ball. A quick suggestion here, a shot of energy there, presence that stamps confidence on a huddle. Fans even latched onto a superstition, pointing out the black Air Force Ones someone rocked on the sideline as a good luck sign. Call it whatever you want. In the playoffs, perception becomes part of performance. If you believe you can step into a building and bend it to your will, you play like it,